For Ebenezer, it was the worst of times, before it was the best of times. Ebenezer would tell us life spent in selfless joy is a life worth telling, even if your conversion is in the 11th hour. And to hear Scrooge's compelling story, one must pause to retrospect, if only as a sign of respect. Have I really loved well? Have I storied my life with the depth of compassion? For if we see people as books, there are rich reads that compel us to be better. And sadly, there are books of little to no substance. But I pray, dear reader, that your life's chapters be creased with wonder and footnoted with joy. And I bring hope, dear reader, that just as Ebenezer found a new beginning, I pray you too see the conclusion of this carol as a beginning to your very own. Embrace every opportunity to love as a precious gift, as another chapter to your story.
Merry Christmas, guys. I cannot tell you how good it feels to be up here with my real nose. It has been a long time. For those of you guys who are just getting here, I had to be Ebenezer Scrooge the past 3 weeks, and they had 45 minutes every day to try to put on this goofy nose of mine. So just to be up here and do this is really, really nice. Merry Christmas. I love that last phrase that they said, even that Charles Dickens was telling us, this idea of opportunities as gifts. I am not one of those people who thinks that gifts are bad for Christmas. The exact opposite. I love gifts. I love giving gifts. Love getting gifts. I'm against consumerism, but I'm very for gifts. And my guess is that we could probably go around the room right now and spend the next 5 days telling stories about gifts, some that are funny, some that are heartwarming. When I was a junior in high school, really good kid. You can probably tell by this sweater, right? I'm a good kid. And so if I was going to ask for something for Christmas, I'd be like, hey, Mom, Dad, can I have another fish to put on my bumper? You know, like to show them I was that kind of kid. So one Christmas, I decided to branch out a little bit, get a little risky. Anybody remember the band Blink-182? All right, cool. So Graham takes a risk. He goes out of character on this thing, and I ask for a Blink-182 CD instead of the average fish that would go on my bumper. And so it comes time for Christmas. We're in Milan, Missouri, a little town in Missouri, and our tradition was to open up gifts on Christmas Eve, the night before Christmas. So we're all gathered there, and we got a charade that we go through anyway. My Grandma Bertha, great-grandma Bertha, by the way, great-grandma Bertha died when she was 104. Listen to this. Born in 1898, lived to 2002, across 3 centuries. Pretty cool, huh? Anyway, good job, Grandma Bertha. Point is, every Christmas, Grandma Bertha would get me this card that had this clown holding balloons, and instead of the balloons, they'd be quarters, right? And then she'd say at the bottom, get yourself something nice. And I was like, okay, like with $1.25, that's fine. Now I realize when she was growing up, $1.25 could probably buy a car, so she thought she was sending me to early retirement, but I was like, thanks, Grandma Bertha. And then every year, my brother Robbie, she would get Robbie this check, but she would always make it out to Bobby, so he could never cash it. And so every single Christmas, I'd have my, pocket full of change, and Robbie's like, thanks for the check again. And she's like, no problem, Bobby. Right, that was every Christmas. So we go through that. I've got my change jingling in the pocket, but then it comes time to open gifts. And I'm looking under the tree. I've got one to Graham under there that's from the cool aunt. Everyone's got a cool aunt, right? And just based on the size and the weight, I'm like, this thing is very CD-ish, right? Like, we got a chance here. And then you guys know the game. You go around the room. Everybody opens it. It's like one-on-one, so you can see the reactions. Well, it's Graham's turn to open up his present. Super pumped. Tear that thing off, and I'm looking at it, and if you remember the 1999 album that Blink-182 came out with, the picture on the front is a very provocatively dressed woman, right? So I tear open the case, I'm looking at my CD, and I'm thinking, oh no. And the whole room's excited, and they're like, show us, what'd you get, right? And I was like, okay. Did you guys see the quarters from Grandma Bertha, right? They're like, show us. And so I'm like, I turn around the CD, and it was mayhem in the room. People are crying, screaming, right? And they're like, oh, and so everyone turns on the aunt, and they're like, why would you get that for him? They're like, that's what he wanted. And I was like, okay, time out. Didn't want the woman, right? I'm here for the music, so that's fine. And now they're looking on the CD, and it's got that parental advisory explicit lyrics on there, and so it's just, people have pitchforks and torches. They're ready to burn the town down. And then the aunt is like, he wants the woman, he wants the cussing, that's his fault. I was like, we're all just getting super sidetracked here. So from then on, I just ask for savings bonds every year. I'm like, give me the bumper sticker and I'm fine. All right, so we could go around the room and just share stories about gifts. Here's what I want to ask today. In your memory, file through the Rolodex, can you think of the best gift that you have ever given? What's the best gift you've ever given? Chances are, whatever tops that list was not when somebody gave you, I want this, and then you got that, like the transactional gift, which we're all good with. Chris and I are all about that, right? We're fine with that. That probably is not at the top of your list. Usually, what's at the top of your list for best gift given, there was thought, an element of risk, right? See what else? There's a component of surprise. You are trying to communicate something with the gift, and then my guess is if it's at the top of the list for the best gift you've ever given, that you could tell that that person interpreted the gift what you were trying to communicate. Probably, again, if something is solidifying in your mind right now, you can picture that person's face when they received the gift. And my guess is if it is the best gift that you ever gave, that their face looked something like this. Show that picture. That is our oldest son, Gage Michael Cowgill, and that is 9 years ago yesterday. He's born on December 23rd, so he turned 9 yesterday. And I am going to tell you, I remember that night so vividly. And if you see that Santa hat on my face, and Kristen looks tired. I thought childbirth was a piece of cake. I don't know what she was complaining about, but man, I remember just looking into that beautiful boy's face and my family FaceTime. They're like, how's everything going? And I just said, he is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. And my face just showed what this gift communicated, this value. And I distinctly remember the first cry of my baby. We got 3 kids, and I actually, in my memory, I have burned in there the first cry of all 3 of my kids. I remember it. Because when I heard the cry of my first kid, I remember thinking to myself, how extraordinary life is. I heard that voice, and I just thought, how precious. What a miracle. How extraordinary is life. When we think of life, typically we think about just our daily existence, right? If I said, how's your life? What does life mean? You think about your family or your home or what you did today or your job or your school. That is what we conceptualize as life. But I want us to do a quick little exercise here just for a point. So bear with me. In just a second, I'm going to have everybody in here draw your deepest breath possible, and I want you to hold your breath for as long as you can. As long as you're holding your breath, you're going to be putting your hand up, okay? And when you can no longer do this, no problem. This is a safe place, judgment-free zone, but go ahead and put your hand down, all right? Let me also say, don't try to be a hero here, okay? If you've got an inhaler, skip this one. We're not trying to have people fall out. It's not that kind of a service. Okay. So on the count of 3, draw your deepest breath, hold that hand up. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Okay, see Heath cheating by not raising his hand. That's fine. Again, it's a safe place. Pretty good. I see some of the eyes getting a little wider. That's a laugh. That's automatic out. This is that weird time when you can start to hear your pulse, and you're like, this doesn't feel right. Hey, that's okay. I appreciate that. Wait, wow, still pretty good. Band nerds and swimmers, of which I was both, this is our time to shine, baby. They beat the crud out of us all year long, but this is when we flip the tables right here. Okay. What is this, like Team Winhoff? How are you guys so good at this? All right, drop your hands. That was really good. So that right there was about 40 to 45 seconds, okay? And even for those of you who are like total studs, you're the French horn players that were like kicking it during that, probably at the end of that, you could still feel your body going, hey, what are we doing here? Right? Like hey, if something doesn't change, we're going to have a serious problem here. Here's why I bring that up. If we would have continued that for another 5 minutes and you would have been unable to breathe, that is literally how close we are to not existing in this world anymore. 6 minutes without oxygen, 3 days without water, 40 days without food, and we no longer exist here. Now, that is not at all to cause fear, but it is for us to call attention to the fragility of life. Man, how often do we just take things for granted when it comes to life? We say, of course we exist, of course we live, of course we breathe, of course we do that. In fact, we have the tenacity to call some things mundane, and to get bored, and to refuse to call attention to things. We need to recognize how fragile existence is. It is a miracle. It is a gift. If we just act like life is deserved, we deserve that life is owed us, then what happens is that we slip into this entitlement mentality. And when we're entitled, right, then we're not grateful. And if we're not grateful, then we're not joyful. Some of you guys, this past year, found out pretty firsthand how fragile life is. Whether that was just through your personal health or through the life of somebody that you know and love. And I just thought a beautiful takeaway from tonight is whether it's a child or whether it's just us recognizing the opportunities that we are afforded every day to start calling attention to the miracle that is life, the gift that is life, as fragile and amazing as it is. Now, I want to take it a step further today. Forgive me, is this thing messing up? They're used to my big nose. All right. Going back to the very beginning, formation of the world. This is in Genesis chapter 2, verse 7. This is talking about when God was actually forming human together. His concept, his idea was Adam. How do I create that? Verse 7 said this, "Then the Lord God formed a man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living being." God designed you. He said that he knit you together in your mother's womb. You were God's idea. And just like you, Adam was God's idea. And so he forms together this person, this man. He puts the cells together. He creates the skeletal structure. He creates the muscles on top of it. He creates the nerve endings, the eyes, the ears that can hear. Not only that, but the brain that can conceptualize and process and dream and love and emote. And he creates this person, but there is no consciousness. It is just this form that he has created. And then, according to the passage, what he does is he takes Adam's head in his hands and he breathes breath into his nostrils. And in that moment, when God breathes breath into him, breathes life into him, the cells come alive. The body comes alive. The brain synapses start firing. The brain that is capable both of conscious thought and the subconscious control of our body comes alive. Adam's eyes flutter open and he is gazing into the face, the loving, joy-filled, compassionate, creative, beautiful face of the God of the universe. And in that moment, their eyes lock and essentially life begins. Are our bodies miracles? Of course. Man, talk to any doctor, talk to any scientist, and they say, you take a deep dive on our body, and it will just blow your mind, right? I think there's a quote one time that said, if you're looking for the existence of God, you need look no further than the human eye, our bodies are miracles. The way that it can process foods, the way that it can process emotions, our bodies are miracles. And then you add in the consciousness, the idea we have. Look around us, this body, look to the left and the right. This is what our church has created. The creativity is incredible. The ability to dream, the ability to lock hands in love, to be together in momentum with something is so incredible. And still, I have a very distinct memory. I was in Korea. This is when I was in the Air Force. And I had consciousness. My body could move. I could see, I could hear, and still, if somebody would have said, draw or color your life on this page, I probably would have reached for the gray crayon. I felt void of life. I felt there was no vibrancy. I felt that there was something missing. I had tried the same way as many of you guys have tried to find out what life means by myself. I tried everything. I tried to be as good as I could. I tried to seek down that path. Maybe that leads to happiness. And what it ultimately led me to was this moment in Korea where Graham, yes, conscious, yes, his body works. I was on my knees in front of this full-length mirror. And I remember I had this moment of surrender. One of the most honest moments of my entire life. When I recognized that life is a gift and I'd been throwing it away. And quite honestly, that word was surrender. And I said, I give up. I give up trying. God, I trust you more than I trust myself inside of this life. And I'm going to tell you, as well as I can possibly articulate, that in that moment, though I was conscious, I felt the same way that Adam did, that God breathed life into my soul. That maybe for the first time, it felt like life had color. Maybe for the first time, I felt what it feels like to selflessly love. And the way that Adam's eyes fluttered and opened, I felt like I could see the world for the very first time. Why does the church get so pumped about Christmas? Is it because Jesus was born as a baby and we really love babies? No. I mean, we do, but that's not why. The reason is because what God's gift of Jesus meant to this world is the same thing that you felt when you gave that gift that mattered the most to you. The thought, what it communicated of value, risk, sure, surprise, sure. But he said to the world, this is my best. Hopefully this communicates how much I love you. And it was God taking the world in his hands and saying, through the gift of my Son, through the gift of the Holy Spirit, I want to breathe life into you. I want you to see things differently. It was this declaration. We have a quote that says, our life depends on our proximity to Jesus. And the good news is that the gift has already been given. The good news is that God has already offered the gift. And so this, today, Christmas, for our church and for the churches around the world, for all of us, is a celebration of the gift that God has given. To say, we know that you have declared by your gift that you value us. And maybe we get the opportunity in here today, instead of taking life for granted, to pause, to recognize the gift and to say, how is this going to affect us from that oh holy night?
The stars are brightly shining. It is the night of our dear Savior's birth. Long lay the world in sin and error pining, till he appeared and the soul felt its worth. Joy.
And there were shepherds living out in the fields nearby, keeping watch over their flocks at night. An angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified. But the angel said to them, "Do not be afraid. I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all the people. Today, in the town of David, a Savior has been born to you. He is the Messiah, the Lord. This will be a sign to you. You will find a baby wrapped in cloths and lying in a manger." Suddenly, a great company of the heavenly host appeared with the angel, praising God and saying, "Glory to God in the highest heaven, and on earth peace to those on whom his favor rests." That's the message of Christmas, Charlie Brown. Talking about giving gifts. When I give gifts to my kids, they usually have one of two reactions, and I love them both. One, they'll just grab the gift and they'll go off and start playing with the gift. And I like that because that means whatever gift I gave landed, right? I don't always give, sometimes it's a huge whiff. So I like it when they like the gifts. That's good. But sometimes I'll give them this gift and it'll have this moment where they're like, "Oh, thanks, Dad." And they'll come cuddle with me on the recliner. And I really love that moment. I really cherish that moment. I think we have the opportunity to do both here tonight. What's very, very unique about the gift that God gave was he said simply that he gave the gift of himself to the world. So here's our opportunity here tonight. Our opportunity is one, that we get to take a moment just to sit in gratitude, to recognize how precious that gift really was. That whether you're here with your family or whether you're here by yourself, I want to let you know you're here with family. And we get to just kind of put our arms around each other and recognize how brilliant that gift is. What did God communicate with the gift? He communicated that if you're the only person here on earth, he would have done the same thing, because all he desires is to be in proximity to you, to know you and to love you. And not only do we get to sit in a recliner with him here tonight, but this affects how we live. Just like my kids would run off and they'd have fun with the gift that I gave him, we're going to leave this place and our life gets to look differently because we are in proximity to Jesus. Much like Adam had his eyes flicker and open, like me that day when I was in Korea in front of the mirror, that we can see life differently. Maybe we go out of here tonight into that crisp air and we draw a breath in with more gratitude than we have in years past, to recognize that God has given you a beautiful gift, not just your life that we don't take for granted, that we take advantage of every opportunity, but the gift of his Son. Right now we're going to play a song, and maybe you've heard the song before, maybe you haven't, but here's my encouragement to you. I believe it is one of the most beautiful songs that's ever been written. And instead of just reading it tonight, would you do me a favor? Be courageous enough to make this a prayer in your heart. Almost that declaration to God that says, here's my opportunity, Father, to recognize how good you are, to declare it in the recliner tonight, and to say when I leave, it will affect the way that I live because I want to be in proximity to you.
God of creation, there at the start, before the beginning of time. With no point of reference, you spoke to the dark and fleshed out the wonder of light. And as you speak, 100 billion galaxies are born. In the vapor of your breath, the planets form. If the stars were made to worship, so will I I can see your heart in everything you've made. Every burning star, a signal fire of grace. If creation sings your praises, so will I. God of your promise, you don't speak in vain, no syllable empty or void. Once you have spoken, nature and science follow the sound of your voice. And as you speak, 100 billion creatures catch your breath, evolving in pursuit of what you say. It all reveals your nature, so will I. And if the stars were made to worship, so will I. The mountains bow in reverence, so will I. The oceans roar your greatness, so will I. For if everything exists to lift you high, so will I. The wind goes where you sit, so will I. If the rocks cry out in silence, so will I. The sum of all our praises still won't shine. We'll sing again 100 million times. Out of creation, you chase down my heart through all of my failure and pride. On a hill you created the light of the world, abandoned in darkness to die. Oh, as you speak, 100 million failures disappear. Where you lost your life so I could find it here. You left the grave behind you, so will I. I can see your heart in everything you've done. Every part designed in a work of art called love. You gladly chose surrender, so will I. Like you would again 100 billion times. But what measure could amount to your desire? You're the one who never leaves, the one